Hey there, we're going to get focused on why and how we serve in eKids through a three-part teaching that we are going to dive into the Word and see what God says about children. So our first point is value. What do children mean to God? Mark 9:37, Jesus said, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." So he's speaking of God the Father here. By welcoming children on Sunday, we are welcoming God the Father. And I can't communicate that enough to you that through every Ricky, Lindley, or Anaya that we see on a Sunday, we are serving God the Father himself. Mark 10:14 says, Jesus saw the disciples rebuking parents for bringing their children to him in the temple. And when Jesus saw this, he was indignant. He said, "Let the children come to me. Do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these." The kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Truly, I tell you, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it. Can we learn from children? That's what this verse kind of brings up. If we're supposed to accept the kingdom of God like a little child does, can we learn from how the children react to Jesus? So imagine yourself in this place. You see Jesus at the temple. The children are running to him without hesitation. They are asking questions. They are taking everything in, exploring his goodness with awe, and loving unconditionally. Now, obviously, kids don't always react in these ways because they do have that sin nature that we'll talk about later. But we should approach God with this manner in our preparation for eKids and just how we serve him on a day-to-day basis. Hinder is a word that means to not make the children's path to Jesus slow or difficult. So on a Sunday, we kind of get caught up in the whole curriculum and what we need to do on a Sunday. But our goal needs to be to be growing the love of Jesus in a way that is best for the kids to take in. And a lot of times that's with fun activities and with a enthusiastic spirit. So do not be a hindrance to their learning by trying to get through everything that you have in a day. Go with how the day leads you. Sometimes in Quest, we come in from theater and they are all over the place. They're not listening. I know in Motion they have the same problem. So just think of a new way to put it. Sit all the kids in a line instead of in groups. Sit in a circle. Get all the wiggles out. Do something that you have to do. And just kind of pay attention to how the curriculum is going. If you're doing an activity and they are just not clicking with it, you see they're not really understanding or they're not liking it, move on to the next activity and maybe come back to it. Or if you have something that you can do it a little differently that still kind of gets the main point, do that. Just whatever it is that you can set the tone of the room and make them have fun and get the point across. Matthew 8:10 says, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of the Father in heaven." Their angels see the Father in heaven. And in the same way, that man who owns 100 sheep will forsake the 99 for one. And your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish, any of them. Obviously, despise means to hate or have contempt, and contempt means the feeling that a person is beneath consideration or worthless. And obviously in eKids, when we go in, we're not on purpose trying to put any of these thoughts in our minds about any of the kids that we have, that they're without consideration or worthless. But we need to be careful that we're not getting these thoughts and we're not portraying that through our actions, because we do have kids that can get on our nerves or they're just really hard to get focused, but each one of them is a value to God. So we just need to get our brain focused on our mission and not let that get in the way, and try to see them as God would see them, with value. Every child is important to God no matter what they do, so much that they each have angels that face the Father. And it doesn't even say one angel, it says angels plural. So each of these children have angels that report back to the Father and see the Father. And that's how important it is to God that He would send multiple angels for each and every child that we have. And then we also want to look out for the one. It talks about the 100 sheep that God would forsake the 99 for the one, like the shepherd. So in class, be on the lookout for the one that is disobedient, for the one that is scared, for the one that is bored, for the one that is discouraged, and for the one that is nervous. Because each of these ones are important to God. And you don't know their backgrounds. Each of these kids come with different backgrounds, and we don't know where they come from. So make sure that you're looking out for that one, because they might need a friend, a mentor, and encourage those quiet ones to get involved in the best way possible. And if you need to, send a volunteer to be their buddy for the day, or find another child that would be welcoming to them as a friend. So this brings to our second point, instruction. How do we instruct something so valuable to God? Ephesians 2:3 says, "Among them, we too all formerly lived in the lust of the flesh, indulging in the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, even as the rest." So all of us, children included, are born with sin. When the children want more than their share, they cheat, they're disrespectful in class, they fight, and they are acting in that sinful nature. That is something that they're born with. And even us as adults have grown up and matured, but we still have those sinful thoughts and act on those sinful natures sometimes. And so how much more can we expect the children to be able to overcome their sinful nature? I want you to understand that the kids that we have in eKids are not saved. They're not saved just because they come to church with a Christian family, just because they come to church in general. They could be there every week, but they're not saved. They will have to make a decision to follow Christ, just as each of the parents will. So I want you to understand, if you don't walk away with anything else, that when you serve in eKids, you are in the mission field. Each salvation that we have in eKids is just as important as any salvation that we have in the worship experience. These kids are not saved, and they will have to make a decision for Christ. So we are laying that groundwork through each of the classes that we have. Proverbs 22:6 says, "Start children off in the way that they should go, and even when they are old, they will not depart from it." Us right here, have the opportunity to build the foundation of faith that God will build His house upon. God, the Creator, has entrusted us to pour the concrete to the house, and He will build the faith in each of these children brick by brick, just as He is in our life right now. They need to see God's love not only in our words, but also in our actions. Children are really good at seeing whether we are being genuine and whether we mean what we say. So we need to show that in our actions. Let's see. And they need to learn His principles in a fun way. Because we talked about that earlier. That's how kids will really take a hold and soak in what they are learning, is through something fun and being able to tie it into their lives. Make it a point to make sure that they are getting it. So what is the main point? What's the main point of the story? Try to make sure that they're getting it. Ask questions. See if they understand what you're teaching. If you need to repeat it. Repeat it again. In Quest, we have to do the story twice, because I noticed that we weren't being able to answer the questions after the story the first time. So if you have to read the story again, read the story again. And make it fun. If you come up with a fun way to share it that's not on the sheet, go for it. Try it out, see how it works, and share it with your volunteers so that they know something that's fun and works for the kids as well. Hebrews 12:10 and 11. God disciplines for our good. It does not seem pleasant at the time, but later on it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who are trained in it. Discipline is for our good, guys, and kids good as well. as long as it is in love and training to grow rather than to tear down or isolate. It is really the parents' role, obviously, to punish their children and build those godly qualities. But we are commanded to teach, and we're given that ability to teach on a Sunday. But we have to be able to make it fun and be able to teach those values, and we can't do that without building boundaries. If the kids are up and talking and playing around and hurting their neighbor, we're not able to teach those values, and we're not able to have fun because they're not being able to follow the rules. And the kids will test that boundary that we build just like they would because of their sin nature that we talked about. But in this, as we build boundaries, we don't want to demean them, but to help them think and make a better choice so that they can think for themselves and build over that sin nature. If you think about the verse that talks about spare the rod, spoil the child, a rod is not used to beat sheep. You don't see a shepherd beating the sheep because those are valuable goods to them. They prod them with the rods. So that's what we want to do when a kid doesn't follow that boundary. We want to sit down with them, get on eye contact. If you need a volunteer to do it, teach them how they should go about it. But they need to sit down with them. If they need to sit out for a few minutes, after that time, have a volunteer sit down with them, get on their eye level, and ask them what their choice was that they made that was wrong, and help them come up with a good idea of going in the right direction. So I'm going to give you some tools to set those boundaries. We want to make sure we set the expectations in the beginning. I know in Quest, we talk about the rules, be safe and be kind before we get started. I'm sure in Motion they have something similar as well. If not, build it in. But make sure they know the expectations. If they're not meeting those expectations in any way, give a warning. Let them know what they did wrong. 2, if they have a second offense of any kind breaking the expectations, move their seat or bring them next to you. This is uncomfortable for them and gets them out of their routine, gets them back focused. If they're talking over here, split up the pair and move one to the other side or move one by you. If you have one that has trouble focusing or is a little disobedient, give them a job to do, even if it doesn't seem important to you. They will feel like they have purpose and they will help alongside you. If it's a third offense, have them sit out for a few minutes to think. And like I said before, have a volunteer go down, sit with them on eye level, get them to think about what was the thing that they did wrong, and get them to think about what would be the right thing to do. If it's a fourth offense, bring Katie or the coordinator who is there in and have them take the child out and talk to them and see how they can help them to better follow the expectations that we set. And if it's a fifth offense, obviously Katie or the coordinator will have to call the parent out and get that resolved that way. Hopefully we don't get to that point, but just follow these guidelines 1 through 5 so that we can create those boundaries and the kids can have fun and follow the rules. Because if we're all following the rules, we'll all have fun. The third point is participation. Mark 9:35, Jesus said, "Anyone who wants to be first, who doesn't, right, must be the very last and serve all." Are you serving for the right reasons? Are you well prepared so that you're able to get through your curriculum without stumbling? Are you prayed up and spiritually filled? Do a heart check this week. And if you are lacking in any of these areas, let Katie or I or another leader know how we can help you get better in those areas. Make sure that you're ready for class, reading the curriculum through. Make sure you're getting into the worship experience, the opposite of the one you're serving. And make sure you're praying for more kids to come, that you can be full of the Spirit and that God can provide the words for you to speak. 1 Peter 5:6 says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up. That he may lift you up, being God. Each of us is being molded by God, even through serving kids on Sunday. He is using that to mold us towards him, to be like Jesus. To be understanding of one another and correct graciously. In the Bible, it talks about correcting one another, but it says to do it graciously. We all make mistakes sometimes, but we also all succeed in others. So if you see another volunteer, bring them aside and help them get on the right track. If they're doing something that's not quite right, correct them, but do it graciously and in love. A lot of us don't even know we're doing something wrong. We just need that loving feedback so that we can do what we need to do. It is very easy for us, especially me, to either get big-headed and prideful, or to disqualify myself that I'm not good enough to do what I do. God is the source of our serving. It said that under his mighty hand that he may lift you up. He is the source of our serving, the discernment that we have, our strength, our ideas, the words that to say if we ask him. He will give us that. So make sure you're praying and asking God to give you that discernment of what to do, the strength and the words to say to the kids that they can get the point across, that they can see the love of Jesus. 3 John 1:4 says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. We are not only teaching children, but empowering families and eKids. That's our slogan for eKids, empowering families and children. There is nothing more important to a parent than to see that their kid is coming to know Christ. And there's nothing more important to God than to see that his children are coming to know Christ, whether it be parents or children that we serve. So that's how important it is for us to do what we do. And again, you are in the mission field. Know that your job is important in eKids. Take an extra 2 minutes at the door. I know that it's really hectic when we're checking out, but to ask the kids to share with their parents something that they learned. Help the parents know that they are coming to know Christ and knowing the truth. So prepare your kids ahead of time, whether it be reciting the memory verse or reciting something that they did that day or learned about. Get the kids together in the very end and get them to think of things that they're going to say, just like you would for memorizing the memory verse. And then when the parents come, just stop them for an extra couple minutes and have the kids recite something that they did that day, something that they learned, or the memory verse. So the parents that can see feedback of what's going on in the classroom. Also, if it's at all possible, ask the families if there's anything that you can pray for them about. Maybe they just moved here and they need some encouragement, or they just lost their job, or things like that. Just use your judgment if it's something personal that you may need to not bring it up in front of everybody. But if you're able to, and it's not something super personal, the next week after you prayed about it for the week, bring it back up to them. How is that going? Have you found a job? Have any bites on your applications? How's the new move going? Have you gotten everything moved in? Make sure we're connecting with the families, because they really need that. And the kids as well when they come into your classroom. Give parents helpful feedback of what children excelled in and how they overcame struggles in the day. Every parent wants to know how their child did. And they're going to come up with their own imagination of how their child did based on how they perform at home. So we want to give them actual feedback of what happened in the classroom. Give them a little blurb of, Lindley did really good with the memory verse. Johnny, played really well with his friends and was sharing toys. Or if something, wasn't going quite right, bring it up. It's okay to bring it up, but just do it in love. And so like if, let's see, Lucas was walking around, and we had to bring him back in, say that Lucas struggled a little bit with focusing in the beginning, but he was able to overcome that today, and he was able to sit for the rest of the story. Sorry, Nicole, Lucas was just what I came up with, and it wasn't Lucas in general. It was just anyone with Lucas. But I just want you to be able to give that feedback to the parents. They want to know what they're learning. And so our 3 points are value, instruction, and participation. And those spell out VIP, because God's children are each VIPs to him. Very important people, just as we say, for the people that come new to our church. So each child that we bring in, even if they've been there multiple times, they are a VIP to God, and they are valuable. And I want you to know that you are valuable and are super important, and we thank you so much for all that you do in eKids. I hope this was help to you, and have a great week.